the heart of it. How many people saw The Reader, the movie? It's about an SS guard who was in a camp. And she was in the women's camp. And every week, out of the prisoners, she selected 10 who were sent then to be killed. And now we're having the trial. And the judge is asking her, didn't you know that when you selected those 10 people that you were sending them to their deaths? Now this is the trial in Germany, how many years afterwards? Everybody's now looking at what had happened in the concentration camps. And you could see the horror on the face of the judge and all the people in the court when she said, yeah, but we were the guards. Every week they were sending in new prisoners. It was overcrowded. This was our job. We were guards. And there was horror on everyone's face. What? You were guards? This is what you did. But when we get caught in a culture that does things, we lose the horror. In the United States, there are some of us that have horror that alive human beings are put into small places of confinement, 10, 15, 20 years, and taken out and killed. And they may, in that process, like Joseph Adele in Virginia, watch 20 people ahead of him be led past his cell to be taken out to be killed. There's no horror because we're so removed from it. And I walked out of that film because I've accompanied 6 human beings who were alive and then who were dead, and I watched the process. And been with murder victims' families. Like now, our witnesses, our luminous witnesses here in this room here in New Jersey, 62 families saying, don't kill for us, that's not going to heal anything, to let us be witnesses while you kill another human being. And we have to arouse, we have to blow on the coals of our souls, and we have to stand present to the horror of what the death penalty is. It is a torture issue. It is the chief civil rights issue in this country. It is a gateway issue that has in it every wound of this country. Racism is in it. The poor people are in it. Disrespect for life, well, a few innocent people, no system's perfect. You know, even house painters sometimes fall off the scaffold. And when you have that dulling of a sense of moral horror, you know that we have moved in a place in our society of a kind of moral degeneracy, and because we're all like goldfish swimming in the bowl, it's par for the course. It's what we do in the United States. The 5 human beings who are sitting on death row in Maryland, who have been condemned to death and so now are having a living death, waiting to be killed. And then there's just us. The best definition of justice is just us. But when we have a sense of moral horror and that we got to change this thing, we begin to get very creative about the kind of dialogue we got to do. And I'm horrified at the tricks and what happened in the Senate. But see, that's politics. We go, well, that's politics. And that's the way politics works in this country. There is no moral horror generally in politicians. The conscience of the nation, the conscience of the people who have died, the conscience of the civil rights movement, where you think of how many times Martin Luther King and the group in Montgomery would come up against that white citizens council when they're doing the bus boycott, defeated again, defeated again, defeated again, until finally they won. And what Gandhi said, we do what we do because of the moral integrity of it. Not for success, but there will be success. But the fire has got to be in us. So we got to do what Jesus said too. You got to be like a dove, but sometimes you got to be like a little snake. And I'm not down on snakes. I think they get a bad rap. Snakes are ancient symbols of feminine wisdom, which is why I kind of got squelched in the Bible story. But to have our heads on and to be creative. And what are the legal issues, not just legal issues, but ways that we can approach the death penalty in this state? Well, you know what I've heard? We have a de facto moratorium. The state doesn't have a method for killing people. The Medical Ethics Board in North Carolina stopped the death penalty cold because they issued a directive. Any healthcare physician or person who works in the death penalty will lose their license. And they have stopped it cold in North Carolina because human beings should not be tortured and they should not be killed. And I am convinced we're having trouble with the torture issue in Abu Ghraib and Gitmo. And the soil was tilled in Texas when George W. Bush would sit on the morning of an execution, 152 of them, with Alberto Gonzales, his legal counsel. They would look at all the cases. They would look at innocence. They would look at mitigation. They would look at mental retardation. They said they looked at the cases thoroughly and did a check mark. They met for 15 minutes on the day of an execution and put check mark 152 times and killed human beings. And Alberto Gonzales goes right up to the AG office, and the next thing you know, he's saying the Geneva Conventions don't mean that, well, you can't torture people a little bit. We got to rewrite those. It's all part of the same soil. And when I say every wound of our society is in the death penalty, it is not a peripheral issue about killing a few terrible people for terrible crimes. It is at the heart of who we are as a society. And we have to take heart in the legitimacy and the moral rightness, like Martin Luther King used to talk about, the moral rightness of our cause. And we have to read, and we have to learn, and we have to talk to people, and we have to organize. So all I want to say to you is, I'm glad I came at this time. Justice is never just handed to us, as Frederick Douglass says. We always have to strive for justice. But just know that the cause is right. You know, when Martin Luther King talked about when the universe bends, it bends toward justice. That's us. And just be glad you're awake and alert to one of the huge issues of our day. That it will not be said of you that when some people will stand in horror when the documentaries come out about the United States and how we took people and killed them. Do you know that in the witnessing chamber in Texas where they've killed over 400 human beings, do you know there are 3 witnessing chambers, and one is for the state and one is for the victim's family to get their closure and their healing and to honor their dead loved one. And the other is where the mother stands to watch as her child is killed on that gurney below. Over 400 human beings killed because we're in a culture, because there is no horror, because people say, well, that's just what we got to do. So we got to tell the stories. We got to get people visiting. We got to stand with murder victims' families and let them stand and be our witnesses, because they are the wounded healers who stand before us and say, not in my name. And they are our incredible witnesses of moral courage who stand before us and say, look, I'm whole and alive by taking this stand. This isn't making me sad and dragged out and depressed and suicidal. I'm alive. I'm alive because I'm standing here for my daughter, because she was alive, and I'm living her life now and showing the connectedness and the communion of all beings that we have with each other. And don't underestimate the taking of some human beings and saying we can cut them out of the web of life is why we're in so much trouble with our planet. When you say, well, you, and you don't deserve to live, so the polar bears are drowning, and so we're killing our planet. So species, every 20 minutes, another species is destroyed on this planet. It's all connected. It's only one web of life. And thank God you're awake. Did you ever think of that? You could be sleeping, but you're awake. We are awake, and it is a blessing to be awake.